crisis and response within Europe. However, just looking at our map here of the activations in 2021, we see a lot of things that happened as well outside the European Union. And every member state, every state actually, every international organization and the UN can call for assistance through the Union Civil Protection Mechanism. And there we work closely together as well with our EU delegations. And as you can see, most of the responses that we were conducting in 2021 is COVID-related, from expatriation, repatriation, to bringing over medical supplies, vaccines within Europe, etc. So there's a lot that happened since 2020, but as well 2019. And I will go a bit closer into what that means. So DG ECHO is actually a multi-layered response mechanism or capacity. We build very much on national capacities that are being topped up by ad hoc offers in case of there is an emergency. The Beirut response was one of them, where we needed expertise from member states, from as well companies that can be channeled through the mechanism. And then we have our European Civil Protection Pool that are dedicated, predefined modules that member states register within a pool, and everyone around the table knows what I am talking about. If I talk about high capacity pumping, it's defined capacities, defined outcomes that if I, as the country XYZ, needs it, I know what I get if somebody else is sending it to me. And that's something which is absolutely crucial. And then you see at the very right-hand side, rescue capacities. In 2019, we really made a breakthrough in EU legislation. And again, if you are more interested in what has happened, please contact me or Arthur, and we will forward you all of the legal texts. There's a lot in there to understand. And with the rescue capacities, we build up a safety net in case there is a cross-border emergency within Europe that surpasses all response capacities of a single country. And there we step in as the European Commission, as Team Europe, in solidarity with our partners. And there we can buy very specialized equipment. And I need to bore you, unfortunately, with this a bit more 1990s slide, but we have a low probability and high impact kind of situation that we as DG ECHO are now preparing for. And that's exactly what pulls up the most resources, and most countries or cities either cannot or don't have the means to prepare for such an event, or it's ineffective, inefficient to do so. And there we have a role to play as European Commission to say, look, a disaster, when we a lot talked about the flood disasters in 2021 in Luxembourg, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany, well, it concerns all of us. Let's act upon it. And that's exactly the kinds of situation you see here, the local capacities, the national capacities, mutual assistance with the Union Civil Protection Pool, and then as rescue layer, a safety net on the very top of it. What are rescue capacities? And these are capacities that we define together with member states and that are written into our new legislation and defined as well by member states and specialists what should be in. We have, since 2019, aerial forest fire assets, medical capacities, and within those medical capacities, stockpiling, emergency medical teams, medevac capacities, then CBRN topics, decontamination, stockpiling, detection, shelter, mobile labs, transport and logistics. All of these, we know as well from our humanitarian side, they are bottlenecks and they are very much needed in those low probability, high impact situations where we really need to act. And I just highlight, since the establishment, aerial forest fires, medical stockpiling and medevac have been used. Just the other day, the first time the medical capacity was used by Norway expatriating a patient from Poland. And the medevac capacity was, as legal act, being approved by member states a week or two ago. The yellow ones Shelter, mobile labs, and transport and logistics, the very same. We just see in 2020, all of these have been put into legislation. We worked on them very long, but they have been put into legislation just in the past 2 months. So we really planned on what is needed, discussed with member states, and then put it through. As you can see, there's a lot of action happening and a lot of innovation happening as well. And all situations of the past 4 weeks, not only in Ukraine, prove us right. How does it work? It's actually not that the European Commission has warehouses or has designated areas or spaces where we put our own resources, but we go through member states. Member states apply for grants for these predefined rescue capacities, be it medical stockpiling. So a member state or on medical stockpiling, Johanniter, Malteser, etc., apply to host this very stockpile. The European Commission pays for it, and the European Commission says as well, if in case of need, there is a cross-border emergency that surpasses local capacities, calls for this medical stockpile to be deployed through European Commission grants as well. We again come into transport and logistics a bit later. So this is how it works. Secondly, and we just again have a new layer of what is possible now for the European Commission. And you see our kind of pyramid with member states civil protection, union civil protection, pools, rescue, and then we have on the very top direct procurement by the European Commission. And now we can, as DG ECHO, procure in case of emergency rescue capacities. We will do so, for instance, currently for shelter, most probably. We think about transport and logistics right now as well. And there is many more things, CBRN, etc., where discussions are ongoing. Should we do it now? Make it and make it fast. And this is a major shift within the way civil protection is organized between member states and the European Commission. Again, a boring slide, but an important one for everyone and especially for member states. The European Commission finances transportation of these predefined modules that we are having. So you have, again, the high-capacity pumping. You would like a state A, offer it to state B, but the transport is quite expensive. And if you want it fast, you will need to fly it, and that's even more expensive. So again, this bottleneck was identified by DG ECHO as a point where we can step in, and we should step in, and we do quite a lot of transportation, co-financing, and helping thereby not only member states, but as well people who receive it. We had a lot of co-financing as well for expatriation and for masks and vaccines in the COVID response being flown away and shared through European states and countries and agencies. And that's something that we are very proud of, and it's a simple and effective tool. I would just quickly jump into the Emergency Response Coordination Center, because this is where the coordination and the beauty and the media attention goes to, actually. We have a 24/7 emergency response and coordination center in Brussels in our facilities of DG ECHO. And we do monitoring, risk assessment, in-time information, not only to member states, but as well to other commission services. And we coordinate responses. Right now, we coordinate not only response to Ukraine in Poland and neighboring countries, but as well, there is an emergency in Burma. There is an ongoing emergency in Madagascar. There are COVID vaccines being shipped all over the world. This goes through coordination through this very system and this very center in the middle there. And we, discuss it with quite a few of you over coffee, need to act in, or think about the future. So we put on another layer with our policy team to say, we need to prepare for scenarios. And the first two scenarios that we prepare for are severe heat waves and severe nuclear accidents, just to have a starting point on how do we organize ourselves and how do we translate scientific information and bring it into traction at policy level and prepare for disasters that are to come. Climate change is one of the new ones. And Philippe, I will be very fast. Because you already look at me a bit like, Secondly, we have an initiative, the ERCC 2.0 initiative, because we have the capacity to work 24/7, and there is experts sitting there, and we have the resources of all member states. So let's make use of that and go a bit into forecasting. What is likely to happen, and how should we react to that? There's an awful lot of work that needs to go into this initiatives and kind of capacity, but it's really worth it, because it will save lives, it will save us money, and it will save us reaction time. So this is something that we really strive to work at. And here I would like to go back to the second slide with the prevention and preparedness and response triangles that we had in mind there. There is a lot of work going on, and we would like to translate it and bring it down. This is something how it might look like. In December, we made a first assessment of how might the Ukraine crisis be going on. And this is nothing political, it's just like for a technical level, how they could react. And of course, predictions are not always correct, but just the way things are evolving shows us that we need to think about what is happening in the future, and not only be a response organization that jumps in when the shit hit the fan. I would like to have 2 more slides, which is more things that are happening and that are interesting for you as well. That's why I put them in. We not only deal with emergencies and responses, but we do as well, we have close links to support for environmental disasters. Here's the ERCC again linked up, but as well climate change and deployment of experts, be it cyber experts, expert for cultural heritage. We have quite a few of them who assess demolitions after earthquakes, who assess flooding areas, what will happen to cultural heritage sites, etc. And as well, we have dedicated and quite interesting mapping capacities and capabilities. We have satellite systems that we can tap into, and situational awareness I was already touching about before. And this is something that our legal framework allows us for, and we would like to make use of it. We will make use of it, and we are happy to have you all on board. And with Philippe, we're already coordinating a lot, and we will do even more so. And I'm happy that Arthur will present our knowledge network, which is even more interesting for everyone around us, I think, and leave it for that. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Simon. Well, you introduced Arthur, so please, Arthur, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
I will just move.
All right, you can see better. All right, without further ado, I will jump right into it. But before that, actually, I would say that you can read in the meantime the words from our Commissioner for Crisis Management, Janez Lenarčič, about the importance of knowledge that, in a way, sets the scene for what we are aiming to do as well as part of the Union Civil Protection Knowledge Network, and as well as part of the collaboration that we are trying to, explore and develop farther and farther together with colleagues across the Commission services, and with other communities like CERIS, so that we all work together for a common goal that is preparing, for more resilient societies and informing our actions better. So, as you know, the Knowledge Network vision, or the role that the Commissioner has defined, is materializing. The Knowledge Network was first introduced into the legislation during the revision of the UCPM Rescue Act in 2019, and was finally, after 2 years of negotiations with the member states, inaugurated at the end of last year on the 7th of December. And I just wanted to say that, in the first stage, we will be focusing on consolidating, strengthening, and improving what exists before, going forward and adding on additional activities and so on and so forth, so that we don't necessarily reinvent the wheel when it's not needed. And for your information, on the slide, the vision and mission that come from the strategic plan of the Knowledge Network that is yet to be discussed with the member states, hence the little asterisk, pending endorsement of the Knowledge Network Board, a board that brings together the member states. We're meeting next week. But before that, you may even ask, perhaps, why do we need the Knowledge Network? And we come from the position that a network is much more than the sum of its individuals, and you already see effects of that kind of thinking here today when you bring together different projects with different mindsets, different experiences, different levels of knowledge, coming together, sharing, and then reaching each other through this process. And we are believing that this is exactly what we need for the Union Civil Protection Mechanism, to tap into the knowledge that is out there and elevate it and make sure that it's being heard and being listened to and it's actually being used. So that translates into those 3 roles that we defined as well for the knowledge network. That is of the knowledge broker, partnership facilitator, and innovation catalyst. And those roles cannot be achieved without close collaborations with all relevant stakeholders, such as yourself. So we count on those close collaboration moving forward. And very briefly, you will see that those mission elements I mentioned before, those 3 roles, translate into those 3 strategic goals that we have defined for the knowledge network, the goals that will inform our actions in the next 5 years. That is stronger community, shared knowledge for action, and research that matters. And what it means in practice, I'll come back to that in a very moment. Before that, perhaps a little bit for you to understand better how we will function moving forward. Quite naturally, because of the fact that the Union Civil Protection Mechanism is a little bit of, you can say, political body. On the EU level, we have a supporting competence in the area of civil protection. So we have to work closely, and we do want to work closely with the members and member and participating states. And that expands as well to the knowledge network. Because we want to make sure that the member states who are the ultimate users of the knowledge that we'll be trying to collect and share are there. So that's why the knowledge network members level at the top of this pyramid is limited in a way to the member and participating states of the Union Civil Protection Mechanism and the European Commission. But this is only to define the governance, strategic visions, and so on and so forth. When it comes to actual activities, the second layer of this pyramid, the knowledge network partners, this is where we see a lot of collaboration with many different stakeholders across the board. This is every single institution that will be contributing to the development and implementation of the knowledge network activities. And finally, the knowledge network community. So this group of stakeholders that are interested, that are working in the area of civil protection, disaster management, that might not necessarily be interested in applying for funding, for projects, for tenders, and so on and so forth, but are interested in the outcomes of that work, might be interested in joining for the events, and so on and so forth. So just very broadly to hear that. How it will function. So we've decided on the way, when discussing it with different stakeholders, to shape the activities of the knowledge network across or along 2 main pillars. The capacity development pillar, understood classically as a capacity development, building up the knowledge and skills, competences, not necessarily as civil protection capacity for response, and the science pillar, where we want to strengthen the dimension of this science policy practice interface. And my colleague who's joining us online, Christina Corban, the leader of the Disaster Risk Management Center, will say a few more words on that. Because what's important, as part of the knowledge network, we build on what already exists. And the science pillar, our starting point is the excellent work that has been introduced to by the Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center in the last, 7-8 years of functioning by now. So just very briefly, a few examples of activities. I won't be describing it all, don't worry. You see those different pictograms. Some of you might be involved. I saw THW colleagues, but perhaps some other colleagues who are more on the response side, different training and exercises activities. So building up capacity of first responders to work across borders, to help out colleagues in the neighboring countries, and so on and so forth. So we, on the UCPM level, organize a training program with dedicated courses on specific themes, or introducing the whole concept of coordination on the EU level, or different types of exercises for modules, for teams, for individuals, and there are many different types of those exercises. I won't be going into much more detail. But what's important, we are trying to introduce a flexibility mechanism to the UCPM training program, which usually has been known for rigidity of its structure. So we want to introduce more ad hoc trainings that perhaps will be open to much broader public, to different types of stakeholders, to also increase this cross-fertilization of knowledge, so that it's not only a training for the first responders, but a training for the scientists and first responders and policymakers together, so they can benefit from each other's experience and knowledge. One of the other aspects that we want to do as part of the scientific work, and I know that Christina will say a little bit more on that, we want to improve the repository of the knowledge coming out of the projects. Because there's so much valuable contributions every single one of your projects is bringing to the table that then is being lost because your project's websites die 2 years after the projects are gone. Your project results might not be reaching to those who should be picking up on it and then implementing it. So you want to make sure that that knowledge is stored, that that knowledge is transferred, that that knowledge is translated into different types of information product, knowledge products, but also into different languages where applicable. Because that's true that a lot of knowledge that we are creating is in English and not everywhere, not in all the contexts. This is the language that people use to implement their knowledge. And finally, and I perhaps switch the slide now so that you can start looking at it, the Knowledge Network will offer concrete funding opportunities, is already offering funding opportunities to strengthen this collaboration across different silos, if you mean. And I've been listening with a lot of interest to your presentations in the morning, and at the same time trying to look up the composition of your consortia. And what I've been missing, is the link with the civil protection authorities, who are the ultimate end users of the knowledge that very often you'll be producing. Not always, but in some cases, I think this is the dimension that perhaps could be strengthened. And I'm showing the example of the Knowledge Network partnerships. That this is the new call that we launched in DG ECHO. As one of the flagship ideas of the Knowledge Network, where we introduce a requirement of Civil Protection Authority being part of the consortium. As of last year, we acting even as a coordinator of the project efforts to ensure exactly the ownership of the knowledge and of the results that are produced together with other stakeholders, with the universities, with research institutes, with civil society organizations, with private sector organizations. The sky is the limit, depending on the consortium's wheels. And I want to, so this is just very briefly the setup of the consortia from those 2 years, so calls 2021 that have been already launched. And what we are moving towards is, more funding opportunities that have been recently released. It's just last 2 weeks. And there's both Knowledge Network partnerships, continuation of that, and this year we are focusing on the idea of thematic communities that are meant to bring together practitioners, researchers, experts active in the field, first responders, and so on and so forth, along the lines of common risks and joint priorities for the UCPM, be it specific hazards, groups of hazards, response scenarios, and so on and so forth. The thematic community as a label, as a definition, relatively open. Just to give an example, last year we funded 3 projects. One is working specifically on the risk of the wildfires, very classically. But there is another one, as Simon already mentioned, protection of cultural heritage at risk of disasters, or a network of civil protection exercises evaluators. Those are just examples that are out there. So I invite you all already either to go directly to the funding and tenders portal to look up the funding opportunities. Those are projects that are of much smaller scale. I do understand the Horizon requirements push you to build big consortia. This is not necessarily the case of the UCPM funding. There is, of course, minimum requirement there, but I always see it as a testing ground, perhaps, for the bigger cooperation that Horizon can bring about later on. And I hear it a different interpretation that it can be a follow-up to Horizon projects when you actually go and partner with the civil protection authorities to implement different tools and technologies that you develop as part of Horizon. So I finish here. the UCPM Info Day is fully online in the afternoon of Wednesday next week. You can join to listen in about all the different opportunities that the ECHO will be offering this year, both the calls that have been already launched and the calls and the funding opportunities that are yet to come. And I'll just leave you with this slide here at the end. And let me reiterate before I hand over to Christina that the Union Civil Protection Knowledge Network is only the beginning. It's developing, and the technical developments behind the scene, as you all know, take time. So bear with us a little bit longer before all the nice tools and facilities that we're developing are fully actionable. But the knowledge network will achieve its full potential only through a close collaboration with different stakeholders, different actors, that is also yourselves, and we count on that collaboration moving forward. And now I hand over to Cristina Corban, who's joining us from ISPRA in Italy, from the Joint Research Center. Cristina, are you with us?
Here, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you for the introduction also, Arthur. If allow me please to share my screen and let me know if you can see. I have a few slides also to complement the information that Arthur just gave you. Can you see it in full screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just to complement a bit in a few words on the Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center, in particular on the science pillar, I'll try now to provide a bit of insights into the science pillar, which is one of the components of the knowledge network that Arthur just presented. And also just to focus on the fact that, in a nutshell, the science pillar will be the collaborative space where the scientists, the practitioners, and the policymakers will meet to learn from each other, to better prevent, to prepare for, and to respond to disasters. So I will briefly provide some background on the mission of the science pillar, and in particular the inception phase of the science pillar, starting from the activities of the Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center of the European Commission. So for those who are not very familiar with the Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center, the DRMKC, it's the first knowledge center that was established in 2015 in the European Commission. Physically, it's hosted at the JRC, the Joint Research Center, which coordinates different knowledge services, including knowledge centers and competence centers. Their purpose is to process science-based evidence, to inform policymakers and provide tools and service for all EU policy areas. So we work really across different DGs. And in the Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center in particular, we have a community of practice and a steering group involving 12 policy DGs. So the creation and the evolution of the DRMKC was triggered by also an evolving policy context, which goes back to the creation of the new civil protection mechanism, which actually emphasized the need for improved knowledge base on disaster risks. Then there were the broader international agreements, the Sendai framework, and also the Paris Agreement, which also set very ambitious goals and expectations from science and technology. Then progressively, the activities of the DRMKC were shaped with the 2019 and 2021 revisions on the Union Civil Protection legislation. And most importantly, the Implementation Act of that implemented actually the knowledge network in November 2021 was a very important point, because it's a kind of a turning point in the DRMKC, where we evolved from being a predominantly internal commission body to becoming an external entity turned more towards member states and participating states. And this really reinforces the connection with the member states and the civil protection community. I would like to emphasize the fact that in the Implementation Act, they underline the inception of the science pillar that should build and integrate existing scientific structures and networks, in particular the DRMKC, but also relevant Horizon Europe programs in the area of disaster risk management. I will particularly focus now on some of the services and products of the DRMKC that play an important role in this inception phase of the science pillar. And the examples are picked from also the three pillars that underpin the mission and the action plan of the DRMKC. and they also represent, I would say, the anchor point for closer interaction with CERIS and the integration of the outcomes of the projects that we have seen this morning and that we will see in the coming days into the science pillar. And these pillars are the partnership, where we build networks and transfer science into policy, the knowledge transfer, where needs are identified and the knowledge is integrated, consolidated, and shared across different sectors. And there's the innovation pillar, where we co-develop also innovative solutions for mitigating disasters and their impacts. So under the partnership pillar, as we already have seen, the knowledge network is the place where the DRMKC, through its role as the building block of the science pillar, has the responsibility to further integrate and consolidate the scientific activities. So our aim really is to pull together the scattered high-quality data, but also the analytical tools, and put them together and at the disposal in particular of the European Civil Protection member states and participating states, but also the citizens. One of the missions of the knowledge network in general is to map knowledge gaps, as Arthur just mentioned, but also to learn from good practices, ensure also knowledge transfer, and co-design those innovative solutions and tailored technologies. So the science pillar will contribute to this mission with its own specific objectives that are also defined in the strategic plan of the knowledge network. And we tried here to represent these objectives around the knowledge loop. And in particular, they include to link the scientific community with the operational actors and to enable an effective feedback mechanism between them, and to make really scientific knowledge easily accessible and operational, but also to stimulate research and innovation in all areas of the Union Civil Protection mechanism. And most importantly, is really to introduce new technologies and new approaches for dealing with disasters. So in a nutshell, the science pillar will play a major role as a network of users, as well also as a driver of innovations and a marketplace for dissemination of science. Under the knowledge pillar, there are two lines of activities where the DRMKC is engaged also to map the scientific knowledge in the field of disaster risk management, to synthesize it and identify knowledge gaps. And we have two solutions for this, the Project Explorer and the Gaps Explorer, which have been developed for this purpose. Very simply, the Project Explorer is a common repository of relevant research and operational projects and results of these projects. It was developed as a tool in collaboration with the community of users, with CERIS, in collaboration with DG Home, and it was designed to be a shared repository of relevant research and operational projects, and to allow also the results of this project to be easily accessible. Now it is hosted on the DRMKC website, and in the future also we want to make it available through the Knowledge Network platform, so the website of the Knowledge Network. And also, I think one important aspect to mention is that it's currently being updated with the outputs of Horizon 2020 projects for 2018 and 2019. So this is the current layout, a bit of the Project Explorer. So we're trying now to import other funded projects by other DGs, also in particular the new project that will be funded under the adaptation mission, but also the eco-funded project under the Union Civil Protection multi-annual work program for 2021-2024. One of the main challenges now we're facing during this update is the mapping of the project using a harmonized terminology or a better agreed taxonomy for disaster risk management. So to tackle this issue, we are working in collaboration with UNDRR, CODATA, and WHO, but also definitely with DG ECHO and DG Home, to develop together a taxonomy for disaster risk management, starting from the UNDRR hazard definition and classification and hazard information profiles. And really the purpose is to organize the content and to be able also to map geographically the projects and to enable also faceted research, search and analytics of the Project Explorer. In line also with the CERIS mission, the Gaps Explorer is another tool that we developed within the DRMKC and which aims at identifying research needs and gaps in the area of disaster risk management and also the corresponding solution to address these gaps. The tool has been also inspired by DG RTD initiative of the Projects for Policy series of reports. Actually, the first pilot was developed together with DG RTD on forest fires. And we just updated the GAPS Explorer with a new section, including the recommendations from the Science for DRM book 2020, which tackled the consequences of disasters across various assets at risk, like population, economic sectors, and critical infrastructure, and also cultural heritage. So you see that the GAPS and Solution Explorer is the ideal place to integrate targeted recommendations from the Horizon Europe and Horizon 2020 projects and help to analyze the research and innovation landscape in the field of DRM to guide also future research agendas. And under the innovation pillar, I wanted just to highlight one specific platform, the Risk Data Hub, which is a key system also that we are proposing as a deliverable to the science pillar. The Risk Data Hub is a multi-hazard geoportal that facilitates access and sharing of curated EU-wide disaster risk information, but also disaster loss data for different economic sector. And the adaptation strategy has mandated the Risk Data Hub to become the central repository for harmonized recording and collection of comprehensive data on climate-related risks and loss data. As I said, it's one of the key deliverables for 2022 in the context of the science pillar. Therefore, the platform will allow sharing disaster risk management knowledge and methodologies, in particular in the framework of the UNICEF protection. And it will support the member states in the reportings in the context of the national risk assessment and also in measuring and monitoring the Union disaster resilience goals. Recently, the Risk Data Hub underwent a major revamp between the end of 2021 and currently, and we have a new interface that has been released, providing user-friendly also access to our resources. And in collaboration with DG ECHO and in the framework of the science pillar, we are organizing on the 15th of June an online workshop, or it's more a webinar on the use of the Risk Data Hub. And it's an opportunity really for member states to learn how to use the tool and to really provide a space for feedback and discussion on disaster risk management. And just very briefly, I just presented a snapshot of the activities of the science pillar that are ongoing and also planned in the period 2022-2023. We also foresee continuous development of the Risk Data Hub, as I said, to support disaster loss and risk data collection and analysis at national level. And we also aim to further develop knowledge management innovative solutions like the GAPS and the Project Explorer, and to continuously support DG ECHO and member states in the risk assessment, in disaster risk management plans, but also in particular through the development of the recommendations for national risk assessment and the revisions of the guidelines for national risk assessment, and to support ECHO in developing the monitoring framework for the disaster resilience goals. And I think the project that were presented this morning really provide lots of ideas and innovative solutions to deal with the monitoring of the disaster resilience goals and ideas of how to build also indicators for disaster resilience goals. And finally, we would like to continue the engagement with policy DGs and member states through dedicated activities, workshops, and seminars like the DRMKC annual seminar, but also hands-on training sessions. I close it here by saying that the event today really is an opportunity to kick off the next step of the science pillar, which will build on an enhanced cooperation with the relevant disaster management project, like the ones presented today and in this event. This collaboration can take really a multitude of ways, and we can further discuss it together. So I invite all the partners now of the projects to think together with us on how they can contribute to those activities that are already foreseen for the science pillar. For example, to integrate the main finding, the recommendations from the projects into the GAPS Explorer and also the Project Explorer, and to also help in having new functionalities for analytics of disaster risk management research, like looking into geographical or thematic clusters of projects and discovering trends, identifying emerging topics, understanding also the distributions of the EU funds and also the funding needs. And if you would like to engage more with the Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center, these are a bit of potential areas where you can collaborate with us. And I thank you all for your attention. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you, Arthur and Simon. Well, we have some time for questions. I see at least two. Please, Marina. You will have a microphone, I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the lot of information. Yeah, for the implications that I have seen in this knowledge network, and as well in this science pillars. I think that a nice presentation like you have done, it could be good to make it in other contexts. I mean, for instance, Program Committee of Cluster 3, because this posed me a lot of, let's say, question marks that I will try to translate in written afterwards. But for instance, you have talked, when we are talking about this knowledge network, that you have calls, for instance, the call of 2022. And for me, it's not clear, and sure that it will happen for the rest of colleagues in Cluster 3. What is the mechanism of the programming? Because you have talked about strategic programming, but you know that this is an overall. Afterwards, there is a real implementation every year, and who is taking the decisions? What is the sort of program committee or similar that there is there, and how we can, let's say, exchange, or at least has some intersection with these people. Because otherwise, I mean, security research is from the many framework programs. And now we have seen that this thing has come across since a couple of years, something like that. And it has been growing and growing, but we have very little information about the characteristic of the programs, either of the projects. We are talking about what is the intensity of funding, where this funding is coming from, what is the sort of TRL, technology readiness level, and what is the match with our projects. Because at the end, it seems like this science pillar is, they say that is integrating the relevant parts of Horizon Europe. What it means, integrating, it was in the slides. So yeah, it poses a lot of question marks on that, because at the end it seems that okay, this knowledge network is like absorbing part of the program, or how is going to make this collaboration. Also with the Gap Explorer as well. We would like to know a little bit more what is the mechanism of this Gap Explorer. And then you are talking about innovation, and it's quite strange because in the innovation there are, let's say, technology providers at the end, because you have to develop tools and so. But we have not seen along the presentation any work about industrial capacities, because there has to be somebody that has to make the devices, that has to provide with this technology. So what is the connection, for instance, with DigiGrow or with other mechanisms that are in place already in Horizon Europe for this innovation? So you see that there are a lot of questions that I guess, because I see that I'm the one of the people that is coming from Cluster 3, but I think that the people that is online, sure that my colleagues, they will have a lot of questions also to post. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, respond to in fact some issues which are internal cooking in a way. You are fully right to pose this question, and I think it is very important to clarify the links between the UCP knowledge network and the RMKC and CERIS. There is, in fact, both objectives to support clearly the UCP UCPM policy. But I would like to stress that CERIS is implementing the security research program. So we are in charge, fully in charge, of defining the research program and implementing the research program. So CERIS is contributing indeed to UCP Knowledge Network. It's contributing as well to what the GRC is doing. But the responsibility for programming research in the DRM area is with DG Home. It's absolutely clear. So there is no way to say that the scientific pillar will integrate the program. It will integrate knowledge issued from the program. It's something which is extremely important to note. So so there is no mixed match with respect to your role as program committee. The role of research programming is with DG Home. It's absolutely clear. I take one of your points, and then I will give the floor to my colleagues. Which is important is the bridging between the program committee in charge of the security research program and the committee of member states representation that will deal with the UCP Knowledge Network and DRM-CASI, because we need to ensure that indeed we have a strong connection at member state level and knowledge sharing, so that we are not taking, I would say, contradictory directions, and to ensure that there is a clearer coordination among what we will be funding in the future in our future work program, what will be taken up by your program and UCP Knowledge Network. But I would like to be extremely clear. The responsibility for research programming is with DG Home.
Okay, it's on. Thank you, Philippe, for setting the scene. To complement, I absolutely agree, and thank you for your question as well. In terms of the funding that we have available in DG ECHO, this is meant, of course, as a complementary measure to the much bigger envelope that the colleagues dealing with Horizon funding have, because in a scale of a year, we're talking about a few million euro overall. So it's a very small scale. The projects that we are funding, depending on the specific call under the Knowledge Network Partnership this year, it's it's a 2 years projects with up to 700,000 euro contribution from the Commission. With the prevention preparedness program, so the prevention preparedness and the marine pollution project, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is up to 1 million euro EU contribution also for 2 years project. It has been increased, to adapt to the needs. But we found that there is this niche and interest among the consortia, among the different stakeholders, to have a smaller scale interventions for very specific actions rather than with a smaller consortia, rather than what the Horizon is pushing for, to have a very inclusive, very broad and very big number of actors sitting around the table, which I know from the perspective of someone who was implementing the project in my previous professional life is sometimes very challenging when you have 30 different partners in a consortium, for example. So this is something that we are trying to address by having more targeted needs. Of course, the ultimate user of the knowledge produced by the projects funded under UCPM is the UCPM, so the mechanism, the member states. So we talk together with the member participating states about their specific research needs that come through different expert groups that we have set up, to talk about early warnings, about the disaster prevention and risk management, and so on and so forth. And we try to collect those ideas and then incorporate them in our programming on the ECHO level, because very often we don't have the capacity or the expertise to provide them with that kind of support, the member states. And that's where we count on the scientific research community with all the innovation stakeholders as well. So to answer very clearly your question, the money comes from the UCPM budget. So this is the budget earmarked for the Union Civil Protection Mechanism. And also to give a context, the Prevention Preparedness Program is in place since 2007, if I'm not mistaken. So it's been up and running for 15 years with different changes. As of, I think, 3 years ago, we introduced a dedicated call that is targeting the national authorities. So it's so-called Track 1, which is meant to build the national capacity of different member states to address specific risks and so on and so on. And Track 2, which is targeting cross-border collaboration. Be it regional, being on the European level, that is the call that I put on the slide. The Knowledge Network Partnership, we introduced it only in 2020. So this is the third iteration this year. When it comes to links with other DGs, of course, we do want to tap into the knowledge that is shared. That's why we're also sitting at this table and talking about, you know, the massive work that the security cluster did in the last years. But it's also cluster 6, for example, the Green Deal projects that are working on fires, fire community that is a natural main interlocutor for many actions that we have in DG ECO. But also many other targeted projects that come across, you know, come our way that work on areas that kind of are overlapping or are interesting for us as a policy DG. And it's, of course, there's a lot of work done on the regional level, so the Interreg funding with colleagues with DG Regio and so on and so forth. There's obviously a lot of links that are already established or are in the process of being established. As I mentioned, the Knowledge Network was barely launched. I mean, we've been talking about it for a while. You know, we had to negotiate it, but you know, it's finally getting there quite concretely. And I hope I answered all your questions. No, I see industrial capacity. This is not per se objective of our calls. Also because we have a supporting competence as a civil protection, so we work with the main stakeholders, but we also don't want to step into the Horizon file that is exactly doing that. So I'll finish here, and there was a question in the Gaps Explorer, and I don't know whether Christina would like to take that one. Christina?
Okay, I'm speaking. I have the feeling that nobody's hearing me.
We hear you now.
Oh, okay. No, I will not add a lot on that Gaps Explorer because really it's a kind of a prototype that was developed, as I said, in the past with DG RTD. So inputting a set of recommendations on forest fire on a specific topic related to forest fires, and we just updated it with the inputs from a project also, or the Science for DRM book that we have also led as a JRC with contributions from a lot of DGs and also citizens and scientists across Europe. And the next step is really quite open now, how we can continue working together on the Gaps Explorer if there's an interest from the projects present today to contribute to this with their, let's say, own outputs, focusing really on targeted recommendations to different stakeholders. Then it's really, it's an open now call for contribution, but there's really no specific plan on how we want to move onwards with the Gaps Explorer. And again, also on the industry, just to highlight something, we work, you know, with the Copernicus Emergency Management Service. We are working very closely with the DG DEFIS, and also in that context, for the Copernicus evolution, we contribute to the calls for under Horizon Europe calls under the space. I think, yeah, the space calls, and just advising on the areas that could be of interest for the Copernicus evolution. But that's really, as a JRC, we're more as an advisory, let's say, role rather than really contributing really to the shaping of the calls by highlighting really what are the research gaps and the research needs. And just to clarify also on this about the role also of the JRC in general in the context also of the Horizon Europe calls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. So, well, just to clarify, Marina, there is no decision-making process here. It's only gathering feedback also from what they are doing. So there is absolutely no. And I would like to stress that what Arthur mentioned about the small-scale projects. Sometimes small is beautiful. There are a lot of actions which are of small budget. It can be 500,000 euro. Or 1 million euro, that will make sometimes a difference. So it's what your program are funding. Similarly, ISF actions, and well, you will have an example. Victor will mention that just after, but Carlos Rojas will give an example tomorrow of what this type of action can lead with respect to complementing Horizon Europe program. But there is no duplication. It's really a complementary action. Yeah. On connection, yeah. We try. We have efforts to establish a better connection. This is absolutely clear.
I would suggest we collect some questions because I saw some hands coming up.
Yeah, but in fact, Horst was. In fact, I have Horst. I have Yaro, who has online, and then Anna Marie, and then, yeah, okay.
Yeah, quite short. Horst Kremers, Berlin, Germany. My question to Christina is about the content. Is material also loaded in the files also in national languages, or is it only English language? My ideas for Explorer is that I think that the best explorers of gaps are those people that run the projects. And I hope that in the end of every project documentation, there is a separate chapter which indicates on gaps identified. I think I tell nothing new. If it's new, I think it will be something very helpful in that direction. It also can be a little bit formalized, make it in an XML format, and you directly load that gap into other databases. The other question is to Simon Stemman. You talked for the general aspects of CERIS. My question is, money makes the world go round. I remember a message to the CERIS community in autumn or winter last year, where it was confirmed, yes, we want to reach out into other programs like Digital Europe and other sources of digital government development funding. We not only have that on European level, we have these masses of euros available also in most member states nationally. But I don't see it anywhere. It was not mentioned here, and it is not mentioned too much on national level as far as I know. Nevertheless, there is a lot of money around, and that would fit absolutely. And digital strategy for emergency management would be something that would fit absolutely fantastic there. Why is it not done?
Thank you. Also, I will ask Christina and Simon to react quickly. For the other questions, I would like you to be extremely quick because we are running out of time, and the issue is that we have a remote presentation that will be coming up, and I don't want these people to wait. So I will ask you to be very, very quick, asking quick questions and quick reply, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Well, a short answer to that is we have the UCPM budget, and we're tapping as well into Next Generation EU for rescue implementation. Digital strategies is often, like when it comes to civil protection, often a responsibility of national authorities and of partners there. And if you want to have more information, I'm happy to get in touch, because I'm not in our budget unit, but it's the answer I can give.
Thank you. Christina, can you respond about the Gap Explorer?
Yes. Yes, I'm very happy that there is so much interest on the Gaps Explorer. Just very quickly on the language issue, we have only now, we are only supporting English. We are already, let's say, struggling with the disaster risk management taxonomy in English. So I think first let's try to figure out how to have a harmonized taxonomy in English, and then I think the next step would be indeed to translate into other languages, as UNDRR has been doing with the hazard profiles.
Thank you.
And also regarding the update of the Gaps Explorer, indeed also we have been working on having a template to facilitate the upload of new, let's say, updates from the project directly into the Gaps Explorer. And I think it's a very great idea is to have also to consider in each of the project, at least one of the outcomes should be a set of recommendations for different, let's say, types of stakeholders to facilitate also this integration directly into the Gaps Explorer. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Yeah, Rome has not been built in one day. Yaro, do you have a very quick burning question?
Really quick. So first of all, thank you very much, Ella, Philip, Simon, Arthur, and Christina for impressive presentation and the breadth and depth of the work. Christina, I have one question about the future of the Science for Disaster Risk Management, whether you are planning another edition for the future. And if not, one of good idea might be to to harness the strength of the knowledge network for a series of thematic assessment reports, but not only reports, but also thematic risk assessments based on certain storylines or certain risk scenario, as we've seen, for example, triggered by a geopolitical conflict in Ukraine, how it propagates into other sectors and how Europe might be impacted by this. So that would be an invitation to not only gap explorer, but the risk scenario explorer, and harnessing all the knowledge that's being produced in Horizon Europe or in the knowledge network and Union Civil Protection Financial Mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaro. Very quick question, Anna-Marie?
Yes, actually, coming back to the morning, we have been discussing about the resilience, vulnerabilities, fragmented sections of our society. And what I'm wondering is this something, the understanding why people don't react like we expect them to react based on official and authorities' guidelines? Is this something that you wish to integrate here to better understand people and society? And at the same time, I'm coordinating a project that is actually ending now. So how to store that knowledge that we have gained within the project, if that is something that you wish to integrate one day?
Thank you. We take that with us. There will be continuation, obviously, of the societal resilience topics in Horizon Europe. About the repository of the research, this is something that we need to discuss among us, because we at Decision will not do that. But it might be the possibilities via the science pillar to do that. But it is something to be developed and discussed internally.
I can only say that, to follow up on those words, I mean, we are not working with the citizens as DG ECHO. It's the responsibility of the member states. So they will be the ultimate users of the outcome of your project. But we are very happy to be this, knowledge broker, facilitator of that knowledge transfer from the projects that, we are funding on the Commission level, on the EU level, and the member states that should be receiving those results. Because, as I was mentioning, we try to always plug it into the civic protection agencies that then hold the responsibility for doing the work that we're also talking about today. So as part of our knowledge repositories that we want to build, there's of course space for all those outcomes of all of your respective projects that are relevant to the civil protection disaster management. So pretty much everything that you do. And Christina, there was a question to you. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. And thanks a lot, Jaroslav, for the question. On the scenario, on the, let's say, also on the idea of how the plan to continue the work on the science for DRM. First of all, just also probably to clarify that DG ECHO B1 together with A3 are working on scenario building that were also, I think, mentioned by Simon. And the idea is indeed to look at the cascading impacts of specific types of hazards and disasters, and maybe the case of Ukraine or geopolitics has not been, let's say, considered, but this is something indeed we are very much looking into, at least as a JRC and in particular as a DRMKC, because we are dealing also definitely with conflict prevention and the mapping of, let's say, the current situation in Ukraine. Now, about having thematic reports, we are planning anyway this year to have a compendium of Science for Policy Brief. It's a different format than the Science for DRM book, building on lots of different topics we are dealing with in the disaster risk management unit in general, and including also the science briefs that we have produced also for the Ukraine case. So this is something indeed currently happening, but I'm also glad if we can think already plan for the future of as one of also of the deliverables of the science pillar to have more thematic reviews, also foresight-looking reports.
Christina, I need to cut you because there are people who need to leave the room and some who are waiting for speaking.
Sorry.
So I'm sorry.
I think we can continue with Jaroslav the discussion.
Yes, of course.
Afterwards.
Continue bilaterally. There is a gentleman who had a question. Is it a yes/no response?
extremely complicated, especially at this time, for example, just in terms of.
Okay, thank you.
I think that considering the possibility of having regional level civil protection authorities as endorsement or other organizations will facilitate actually the potential for more applicants.
Yeah.
I'm just saying this based on experience.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
One word to reply. Sorry, I might have used the word phrase there. Is the civil protection authority? It can be on the different level. It doesn't have to be national, capital-based civil protection authority that is part of those projects. So.
Thank you. Well, for your very well, we could continue to discuss. I think we have a largely food for discussion. I would like to thank my colleagues Simon and Arthur. Thank you for having come. It was very interesting. You see that it is raising a lot of questions. So we will continue our good work together. And I would like to invite my colleague Victor Voitas from. Bye bye. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Since next week. So now we'll be moving to security aspects, which are related to CBRN and protection of public space. Well, it will cover a large range. Victor, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to see some familiar faces. I will try to be relatively brief, so the coffee is not delayed. I work in the counterterrorism unit of DG Home, and I'm responsible for CBRN. I was asked to present also the issue of protection of public spaces as well as the critical entities resilience. So I will touch briefly upon them as well. First, a few words about the threat picture. Terrorism in the EU. I hope you are all familiar with TSAT. That's a very useful publication from Europol. They publish every year an update on the terrorist threat picture in the EU. As you can see, recently the number of terrorist attacks is going down. So that's a positive, of course. You have to take into account that the reporting is delayed basically by 1 year, but overall, the situation is getting better from this point of view. Of course, you can draw different conclusions, especially that if you think about 2020, that was the year of COVID. Many people were locked up. It was not that easy also for terrorists to operate. So, but that's one of the factors, of course, only. Terrorism, but still, we still have many cases, many plots, terrorist plots. For instance, yes, in June 2020 in Reading there was a stabbing. In Nice in October 2020 again a stabbing. Vienna November 2020 shooting. You see, these are. This is basically to underline once again that currently terrorists are basically using simple weapons. And they are not very sophisticated. Later on, I will speak briefly about CBRN. It fits perfectly in this broad picture. What we are mostly worried about is lone actor attacks. So rather not complicated plots with multiple members of terrorist cells, rather radicalized individuals who will use whatever they can get hold of. So sometimes it will be a knife, sometimes it will be a gun, sometimes it can be a vehicle that they own or they will simply rent for or steal in order to commit an attack. So we talk about low cost, low tech modus operandi, which is for the society is of course very worrying and scary because you never know when something like that will happen and who will be the victim. The credibility of terrorist organizations such as Al-Qaeda and ISIS went down, but still there is a threat of radicalization online, especially from this point of view. COVID, unfortunately, was not very helpful because people stay a lot online, especially young people who were very often without too much occupation during the lockdowns, and they might have been fall a victim of the radicalization online. When it comes to CBRN, of course, COVID-19 increased awareness of potential of unconventional weapons. At the very beginning of the pandemic, many experts were saying that this will inspire some biological terrorism or CBRN in general, but as it turned out, not really. We don't really see too much increase when it comes to CBRN terrorist threat. But still, there is a terrorist propaganda. There is a lot of knowledge online. You can find manuals. You can find video tutorials online, how to prepare rice, for instance. So it's easily available. Well, maybe not super easily, but it's available for those who are looking for it. So the terrorist threat, as I mentioned, we still the biggest threat comes from low-tech attacks, weapons of opportunity, or plots where only basic planning is required. And when I talk about basic planning, if you think about, for instance, Boston Marathon attack, it was 3 days from the moment of idea to the moment of execution. So it was a simple explosive device. So as a consequence, a sophisticated CBRN attack remains low probability. But then if it happens, of course, the media will be talking about it, and the psychological effect will be significant. So what we are the most worried about is things which are, let's say, again, relatively easy available and relatively easy to do. So toxic industrial chemicals and plant-based toxins. Ukraine, we are of course monitoring the situation over there. Because of all these headlines about nuclear plants, nuclear weapons, bio and chemical attacks, potential, of course. There is a lot of interest from, let's say, from our hierarchy, so they are keeping me busy from this point of view. Regarding speaking from internal security terrorist threat point of view, not much has changed, but at the same time, in the mid-term, we can think about scenarios like radioactive sources being stolen from the hospitals, which are in cities where there is a war zone and things like that. It's a realistic possibility, and I know that we are not the only ones worried about that. Now, EU framework. In December 2020, the Commission adopted EU counterterrorism agenda. There is a lot of protection of public spaces. We announced the proposal on the Critical Entities Resilience Directive. There is a little bit of CBRN. We talk about chemicals as well as on biosecurity. And then we had Council conclusions on the protection of public spaces. There is an anti-Semitism strategy which talks a lot about one of our recent priorities, which is protection of places of worship. So we conduct, for instance, we issued actually the guidance on how to best protect places of worship. It was translated into all EU languages. And we organized workshops with people responsible for security measures in places of worship in order to first explain the idea, and then we have concrete practical exercises with them for them to see how to apply these measures. We have a large toolbox, a very nice word, toolbox to support member states. We meet with them as well as with practitioners in the Forum on Protection of Public Spaces. We issue, as I mentioned, guidance. We do some interesting research work in cooperation with Joint Research Center. EU Protective Security Advisors Program, that's something that my unit and my director are particularly proud of. It's basically we trained a large number of experts from member states who are already experts in a given field. So we talk mostly about law enforcement. And then upon an invitation from a member state, we can go and support security measures around large events or some VIP events. We only advise. It's not an inspection. What we tell them, they can take into account or they can ignore, but it's a good way of exchange of information as well, and a learning opportunity both for the host country and these PSA members who are coming from the Commission and from other member states. We have dedicated funding, of course, a large number of projects funded under Internal Security Fund Police and now Internal Security Fund. We have a call for proposals open currently. The budget is close to 15 million. Most of it, almost 10, will go to the protection of public spaces. The rest is devoted to other priorities, also around, almost 10 million to protection of places of worship and remaining 5 to other public spaces. We have some let's say, small but important, small but beautiful, as Philippe said, actions, especially the first one will be beautiful. It's an architectural book on security by design. It's done in cooperation with JRC. It should be out, well, here it still says Q1. We don't have much time left in Q1, but hopefully early Q2 it will be out. It will not be a guide, but it will have a lot of practical information on how to better design public spaces in the cities. So I highly recommend that. We proposed an EU pledge on urban security and resilience, and it's like a one-stop shop for cities. There are 2 components. One is, let's say, terrorism, meaning protection activities that we are doing, and the other part is radicalization. We want to be in direct contact with the cities because we know that they are actually the ones implementing protection of public spaces. We support what I mentioned before efforts to enhance the physical protection of places of worship and the call for proposals. When it comes to the drones, we focus on countering UAVs, and we have, first of all, we had 2 projects in that area, Skyfall and Courageous, which are, they were testing, for instance, the counter measures for drones, and we are planning to publish EU handbooks on how to set up strategy against attack from drones. It's a very difficult work because there are many stakeholders involved. It's a very dynamic field. So then detection activities, we do a lot of that. What I would like you to draw your attention to is CBRN trials in public spaces. So what we do together with, for instance, law enforcement networks like RAPOL, we conduct trials. We give them equipment, we tell them how we believe they should use, they give us feedback, and on the basis of that we prepare, for instance, guidance material on how law enforcement could benefit from radiological detection, chemical detection. It also covers explosives. Coming to CBRN, high-risk chemicals, that's one of the actions from the city agenda, counterterrorism agenda. Very, let's say, when you look at the whole CBRN, it's a very small part of this field, but we consider it very important. You may remember the Australia plot when terrorists wanted to construct a chemical improvised device and release hydrogen sulfide in some area, potentially an airplane, maybe a public transport. It was not fully clear, But together with experts from member states, we looked at identification of substances which can pose similar threat. And following that, we launched a study on feasibility of restricting access to some of these substances. Now we are moving towards the impact assessment, so there will be an impact assessment study looking specifically preparing, if that's the outcome, the legislation. We are, as my head of unit says, we are agnostic about the outcome of the impact assessment. So if the impact assessment shows that what we are proposing or what we are thinking about doesn't make sense, then we will just let it go. But we believe, and from the meetings that we have with experts, of course, these are CBRN experts coming from law enforcement, so they have similar point of view to ours, but they also believe that there is a scope for legislation in this area. So because of the COVID, we had to stop trainings that we are organizing in cooperation with JRC in European Nuclear Security Training Center, EUSECTRA. So we had, I believe, 3 sessions which were devoted to management of the contaminated crime scene. It was identified as one of the priorities for the European law enforcement. We were planning also to have a dedicated training for special intervention units operating in a contaminated area. So as soon as JRC tells me that we can restart, we will do that. And one other thing which I wanted to mention, because perhaps some of you will be interested, we are organizing together with the Department of Energy, the US Department of Energy, a workshop on security of radioactive sources in medical facilities. It will be in May, 17-18 May, targeting law enforcement and regulators, but also we were hoping to get some operators of the sources, actually. So if you have good contacts with hospitals which could be interested in participating in such a workshop, please let me know, because it's not obvious interlocutor for us, so we would be happy to talk to them and invite them. It will be an interactive workshop with polling questions, with scenario-driven discussion. So I'm looking forward to it. For sure, it will be interesting. Just one example of an ISF project, Safe Stadium. I always present it because I particularly like it. It's about CBRN security on large sport facilities. It's led by University of Łódź from Poland with partners. That's also what I like about it, is that there are partners from law enforcement, there are operators of the venues, as well as partners from the industry. So we have Real Madrid over there, so we also hope for a wider publicity of the results of this project. So that's. They will look at the security procedures. They start with inspection of the facility, and they will issue some recommendations for the operators. So that's going to be interesting, and it's being already implemented. And the last part of the presentation, proposal for a directive on the resilience of critical entities. It falls under a future-proof security environment pillar of the Security Union strategy, where we have also protection of public spaces. Why we do that? We identified a clear need for an EU action. As you may know, there is a directive from 2008 on European critical infrastructure, but it is very limited in scope. It covers only 2 sectors, transport and energy. It has been unevenly implemented in the member states. So basically, the conclusion is it doesn't really work as it was supposed to be. We see that there are different national approaches to critical entities, and the environment that they have to operate in is becoming more and more complex. So The other thing that contributed to the development of this proposal is that there are new EU measures which it would be good to, let's say, match them from our perspective. So there is a NIS directive, which is on cybersecurity, let's say. There is a shift in focus from protection to resilience, and basically we were asked by the Parliament and by the member states to finally do something with the directive from 2008, which simply was not working anymore. The main aim of the proposal is to ensure the provision in the internal market of services that are essential for the maintenance of vital society functions or economic activities, and to enhance the resilience of entities providing such services. Now, a word of comment here. As you know very well, and it was said even during previous session, that security is responsibility of member states. So whenever we want to have some legislation in which tackles the security matters, it has to be done from some other angle. And here you see that's why it talks about the provisions in the internal market, because that's where we come from when we propose this directive. The proposal covers, so the negotiations are ongoing. So it's, I mean, some things will not change for sure. Details may change. So it covers non-cybersecurity related risks, both natural and man-made, that may affect the provision of essential services. So it can be natural disasters, it can be accidents, it can be pandemic, for instance, and so on. So for cybersecurity, of course, there is a NIS 2 directive. So we, in the new proposal, in this new directive, we want to move from protection to resilience. We want to focus on identification of critical entities. So the previous directive was talking about cross-border infrastructures. Now we want to see critical entities at national level, but whenever they have impact on larger number of member states, and the number is subject to negotiations right now. So we move from 2 to 10 sectors. We will have a risk-based approach, both at member states level and at the Commission level, and we will provide some kind of support, which I will mention later. Here you have the list of sectors. So that was also subject to long discussions, which sectors should be covered, which shouldn't be. You see that some of them, they have entities from sectors with 2 stars. They have their own legislation. So whenever they are, let's say, subject to the other legislation, which also covers resilience, and they fulfill obligations under that legislation, they are exempted from this directive. That's the idea, at least. Main elements of the proposal: there is national framework, there are obligation on critical entities, risk assessment, resilience measures, incident notification. There is a specific oversight of critical entities of particular European significance. So that's the ones which have impact on a number of member states. We will support the member states and the critical entities. And there will be a critical entities resilience group, which basically will replace points of contact, CIP points of contact. Here, I mean, the slides can be shared, so perhaps you can analyze it separately if you wish so, because there is an interplay between our proposal and the NIS 2 directive. NIS 2 seeks to ensure cybersecurity on the part of essential and important entities, and we ensure the overall resilience of critical entities. So we'll see how it will work out. You see that the sectors are, all sectors that are covered by our directive are also covered by NIS. And we are in the middle of negotiations. I'm not sure if the second link is still active, but yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Victor. The floor is open for a few questions. Yes, Bertie, would you have a microphone somewhere floating around? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. And I was watching the slide that you showed when you were talking about this new directive, so about the potential sources or hazards that could be a reason for this one. Yeah, and I think it's a good list of potential risks, but I'm kind of missing one, and that's wars and warlike situations. It's, as we all know, after the few weeks here, that it's not too far-fetched to also consider that kind of threats could be imposed to the European member states, and although even if they are caused by a war, they still are civil protection and activities that will be taken care by civilian organizations. So I think it would be very good to add that type of risks on the list and also be prepared to that kind of events. Thanks.
To be honest, I'm not sure if the list is exhaustive or if it's written there in particular or such as, it's always a discussion in the Commission how to formulate it. But I'm sure, in general, man-made disasters are also covered. So I'm sure in case of war, it would also apply.
Another question over there. Here's the gentleman, and then after.
Thank you for your really nice presentation. I just want to highlight something which is very, very important nowadays that we hope not happen. You mentioned Ukraine. It could happen something bad for whole Europe, not only in Ukraine. The question is there any plan to protect, let's say, European countries, including Ukraine, if we like to say, now with this study or with this proposal? And the other thing, minimum we need to have with the social media, some of risk education for this chemical. What can people do? What can be happened? So this is also, I think, it's easy to be done in each country, in each area with the language. Because now we are in the middle of the war, let's say. We are not far away from Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, regarding this directive, it's still under negotiation, so as such, it cannot help yet. Although some solutions are, let's say, are more or less in place and could be used. Like, for instance, these advisory missions. This is something that can be set up quickly, and it's basically, that wouldn't be too difficult. Some things like, social media and general population preparedness, I would say that's more for colleagues from civil protection. We are counter-terrorism unit, so we don't really deal with that type of actions. But in general, I would support your view that it would be good to raise awareness of population regarding potential threats and their consequences.
Very quick. And
yes, it's a quick question regarding the directive. In some countries, I would like to take just example, France, a lot of these issues are covered by confidentiality. And I was wondering how confidentiality between the state, the critical infrastructure providers, and the Commission is a is a problem for you to deal with that, or it's a slowdown in the in the conversation and the negotiation? So I wanted to get your view on this point.
Well, I'm not personally involved in negotiations of this, but you know, the negotiation is taking place, let's say, with the country representatives, and when we meet with CIP focal points, points of contact, sorry. Again, these are member states representatives, so by definition, we have to somehow assume that they take care of it at the national level, and I'm sure that to some extent, at least, they do. In some countries, better; in other, worse. But at the same time, you know, here we talk about really critical entities. Huh? So it's the number of these entities is relatively limited. Yeah, it will be a challenge for some member states, but let's say we are not in direct contact with entities to discuss it. Huh?
Thank you, Victor. Yeah, it's very difficult for us to respond because it's under negotiation as member states, and they will take the ultimate decision. So we are accompanying all the process. So we are not Nostradamus actually, to be able to respond. There is an issue, for example, on drinking water and wastewater. While drinking water is regulated by the Drinking Water Directive, but we speak about safety. Here we speak about security, and these are not the same type of animals that are dealing with drinking water security. And with respect to the policy, it's a little bit ambiguous, this distinction between malicious poisoning, for example, on drinking water, and the issues of safety, the quality of drinking water for drinkability. It's a little bit tricky. You have a question, please.
Yeah, thank you. Andrea D'Angelo from SAFE. The question is related to the protection of places of worship. And it connects a bit to what we have seen this morning, and I think also in the next couple of days. There's plenty of new technologies which are being developed for security. And my feeling, I don't know if it's only my feeling, but is that when we go to the place of worship and to that kind of community, there's a lot of resistance, but also there's a lot of lack of knowledge. So do you think that this kind of DigiHomework could, for example, provide a sort of platform, or let's call it a training platform, to access these technologies? Because many solutions are there, but when we look at our place of worship, it seems that, with some exceptions, it seems that in general new technologies are not widespread used.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's true to a large extent, but the thing is that there is a difference of perception between different faiths. And for instance, one of our conclusions, because we had, for instance, a workshop in Poland with the Jewish community last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago. And one of the conclusions was that it's great that we did it separately, let's say, for the Jewish community and separately for the Christian community, Catholic community, because simply the perception is different, the threat actually is different. The level of thinking about it is different. So for the Jewish community, it's normal that they have to have some kind of protection because incidents happen. And for the Catholic community, it's like, what can we do? More or less this approach. Now, if you give me your card, I can send you this guide on protection of places of worship. But you will see that it's, to a large extent, these are basic things. It's not about necessarily about technologies, about changing a little bit the mindset of people who are responsible for these places to think, as I spoke at the beginning, most terrorist attacks that we see are, it's not that someone is bringing explosives into a church and you need a scanner or some kind of explosive detection. Most of the attacks are with knives, with cars, with guns. So that type of things that they should think about. So I don't know, let's say you have a parking here. is it safe to have it here? Do you know who is parking here? Is there a long street which would allow you to drive fast into a crowd of people entering the church? You know, basic things like that. It's more about raising basic awareness of people responsible for security.
Thank you very much. I think we need to close now. I'm sorry, because we will have an online speaker at 4:15. So I will give a small break. Please come back to the room at 4:15. We'll have two more speakers, one on flood directive and one on health-related hazards. I would like to stress that tomorrow CBRN will also be discussed tomorrow morning. And as an information, we have a session at the conference in Lille on CBRN. And if you need details, Olga Vibornova is here, can give you details on this session. So please feel free to liaise. And I would like to thank very much Victor for your efficient presentation. Thank you very much. Back to the room at 4:15, please. qu'il est là, le monsieur en ligne? Ouais. So please take your seat. Ioannis, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to the event. You have a lot of ears and eyes, ears listening and eyes looking. It could be the contrary, but they decided to be classical. So thank you very much for having joined. And well, so Ioannis Cavadas is my colleague at DG Environment, and he's in charge of the flood risk directive, and he will make a presentation on an update on the directive. So, Ioannis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon again. I'm going to share my screen. I hope you see the first slide now.
Yes, we do.
So now we are going to have an update on the floods directive. And first, I would like to give a very brief background about what the floods directive is, how it works, a couple of slides, and then to list the achievements so far, and also the challenges that we are facing. And after that, I would like to make reference to some relatively recent policy developments which have an impact on the floods directive, actually on flood risk management in the European Union and vice versa. Also, the floods directive has to do with those policy developments. So one slide to remind ourselves about the various legal acts that exist. So beyond the primary legislation, which are the treaties, we have principally the regulations, directives, and decisions. And the distinction is important because we will see that, for example, the floods directive is a directive clearly. So it sets out the objectives that need to be achieved by the member states, but then it's up to the individual member states to define how to achieve those objectives, and also to transpose the provisions of the floods directive into law. On the contrary, there are also regulations, and we will see one later. Actually, we have seen it already. I believe it has been mentioned earlier, and regulations apply in their entirety. So as they are, the text as it is. So a few things about the floods directive, the fundamentals. It was introduced back in 2007. The purpose is to establish a framework for the assessment and management of flood risks, and all this to reduce the adverse consequences associated with floods. And it covers not only the economic activity, but also cultural heritage, the environment, and also human health, of course. The approach that the directive takes is a textbook approach. That's how I like to call it. And it can be encapsulated in 3 words. So identify, evaluate, and react to risk. And this is done in 6 yearly cycles, which helps us to account for the various uncertainties and the changing policy environment. So those 3 words, which are a summary of flood risk management, so identify the risk, evaluate the risk, and react to the risk are translated into 3 steps in the Floods Directive's 6-yearly cycle. So the identification of the risk is done with preliminary flood risk assessments. The evaluation of the risk is done with flood hazard and risk maps. And the reaction to the risk is written into flood risk management plans. So we saw the directive was introduced in 2007. The first cycle, after 2 years of transposition, covered 2009 and 2015. Currently, we are at the very end, or if you like, at the beginning of the third cycle, but let's say we are at the end of the second cycle, which covered 2016 and 2021. And actually, just in December 2021, so two or 3 months ago, the member states were to prepare the second flood risk management plans, which we expect them now to be reported in March as we speak. And then the third Floods Directive cycle follows from 2022 to 2027, and there's no sunset clause. So unless something changes, those cycles would continue 6 years after 6 years. So let's devote a couple of slides to the successes. We carried out an evaluation 2 years ago, and we found that we have now established a river basin-wide approach to risk in the whole of the European Union. So we moved from local to comprehensive. We have shifted from protection only, which was the classical approach, until, let's say, the introduction of the Floods Directive. Now we have also our eyes and attention to prevention and preparedness. This is included in the flood risk management plans. The framework is established, and we have a common language for that framework in all 27 member states. There has been an adoption of new databases, methods, and models for better assessing and mapping flood risk, and the periodic reviews of those. Where previously there was a number of plans, those plans, and I mean plans dedicated to flood risk management, those plans have been consolidated into one coherent document. The existence of this coherent document and the existence of the whole planning cycle has helped to clarify priorities, so for measures, for instance, and it has improved also the awareness of flood risk by citizens and stakeholders, not only because to arrive at the plans you need to coordinate with peers, but also because there is a requirement for public consultation. We saw that there is a strengthened coordination and collaboration between different sectors, so civil protection, spatial planning, insurance. This needs to be improved. The responsibility for managing flood risk has been unambiguously assigned to specific authorities. And of course, because now legally flood risk management needs to be applied at the member state level. Also, the flood-related policy within the member states has been elevated within decision-making spheres. And this partly helps also with the allocation of funding, of course. Which funding, because of the 6-yearly cycles, should have a long-term perspective. And we saw that in several member states, this is now the case. Public consultation, another positive plus sign we have already mentioned, and also it has further motivated, because it has existed before, closer coordination and cooperation in the larger river basins, but also bilaterally we see that member states are engaging. Now we said there are of course challenges, and here we have a list of them. So one challenge would be if we set an objective, every member state can phrase its objective differently, but clearly the objective is to reduce the risk from flooding. But how to measure, how to measure the distance to achieve the objective that we have set. Another challenge is taking stock of losses from flooding events, and this is connected to the previous bullet point. Funding measures, as a policy, it may have been elevated, but not all member states have 6-yearly budgets, let's say, for flood protection and prevention and awareness. Or it's not clear where the funds would be coming from during this period. We would need still yet even more accurate flood forecasting modeling, particularly for flash floods and for pluvial urban floods, so inside cities. Climate change, translating what climate change means, particularly for flooding, and specifically for the individual member states, so at a sub-regional level, is still a challenge. Another one is consolidating the integration of nature-based solutions, because whereas we have made lots of advances in this area, whereas now nature-based solutions are not considered a niche anymore, whereas this is not a new notion anymore, we would like to see more nature-based solutions identified within the flood risk management plans and also at a larger scale. And last but not least, the coordination between the various plans that are prepared in a number of relevant policies. And I would like now to stay a little bit more, spend a few slides, a little bit of time on this particular point. So the coordination between plans prepared under various relevant policies. So you may be aware of, for example, of the Energy Union and Climate Action. That's a regulation, so it applies as it is. It's transferred into national law word by word. And in Article 19 of this regulation, we see a requirement for an integrated reporting on national adaptation actions. So by 15 March 2021, so exactly 1 year ago, and every 2 years from then, the member states will report to the Commission information on their national climate change adaptation planning and strategies, where there would be an outlining of the implemented and planned actions to facilitate adaptation to climate change, including the information in Annex 8. And the information in Annex 8 is actually very broad, because you will see there under point B, climate change projections, including weather extremes, climate change impacts, assessment of climate change vulnerability and risks, and key climate hazards. Also the adaptive capacity under point C, adaptation plans and strategies, monitoring and evaluation frameworks, and progress made in implementation, including good practices and changes to governance. But it's not only this. We heard about the Union Civil Protection Mechanism earlier, and specifically under Article 6 of the recent decision of 2021, also 1 year ago, we read, in line with international commitments, improve the collection of disaster loss data at national or the appropriate sub-national level to ensure evidence-based scenario building. And further, also, we heard about this before, but I think it's worth mentioning or repeating, the Critical Entities Resilience Directive, which is now under negotiation. So the member states would be required to identify critical entities, have in place a strategy for ensuring their resilience, and carry out again a national risk assessment for the Commission to obtain afterwards a risk overview. And the sectors covered, as we heard from the colleague before, are very wide. Regardless of which of those will be included, it's wide already, even if 1 or 2 or 3 drop out. So energy, transport, banking, financial markets, health, drinking water, and so on. So the whole tangible and intangible infrastructure of our societies. And a lot of this is threatened by flooding, as we saw in July past year. And again, last but not least, we have now a new strategy on adaptation to climate change, also of 2021, so a very productive year, which calls for smarter adaptation, a more systematic one, faster one, and of course also stepping up the international action. Otherwise, it would be lopsided. So just a quick look at smarter adaptation. So we have Climate Adapt, an important source to be turned into, reinforced and turned into an important source of information, help to close knowledge gaps on climate impacts and resilience. And on the front of more systemic adaptation, so again, comprehensive data collection and rolling out nature-based solutions, supporting the member states. And finally, on the faster adaptation angle, we could single out climate resilience or sustainable use of water management, but also the climate proofing guidance, which came out recently, and also develop an EU-wide climate risk assessment and strengthening climate considerations in the European Union. So you see that whereas in 2007, when the Floods Directive came online, if you like, the policy regulatory framework, I dare say, was a simpler one. And definitely now it is a more complex one, which needs to be coordinated. But also the upside is that all those instruments are going to reinforce our cause. So I believe in the end, we will be much more successful than if we had fewer legal instruments. So a look back in the first cycle of the Floods Directive, and particularly in terms of climate change, if we look at the first step, at the preliminary flood risk assessments, we had around, let's say, a bit over half of the member states which considered climate change, and the same picture more or less for the flood hazard and risk mapping. For the flood risk management plans, we had strong evidence that climate impacts were considered, and for half of the member states, we had at least some evidence that, that climate impacts were considered. So we can say that over the cycle, there was an improving situation in terms of consideration of climate change. But what's happening now in the second cycle, it's a bit early still to profess on this, but things seem to be looking up, because already when we look at the second cycle's preliminary flood risk assessment, we have almost all member states with strong or at least some evidence that there is a clear methodology in place to consider climate change at the first step, so at the preliminary flood risk assessment stage. Whereas previously, if you see here on the previous slide, 6 years back, we had about half the member states considering climate change. So things have improved. Nevertheless, in terms of coordination of plans of related policies, we found that only 4 member states explicitly mentioned their national adaptation strategy. So there is clearly there room for improvement. On this slide, you have a link to access the recommendations we made individually for each member state, but also a useful, I believe, EU overview report, so bringing together all those assessments, the member state per member state assessments. And on this slide, you see 3 recent publications of December 2021 and then another one from September 2021. One discusses the impact of climate change on floods. You remember this was identified as one of the challenges, so we are trying to make a headway there. It's perpetually on the agenda, I would say, this item. Another one on floods and agriculture. So how can the two work together? Because you may know that currently the member states actually are in the final stages of developing their CAP strategic plans, and until recently developing also the flood risk management plan. So we thought that this was an opportunity to positively influence this process. There should be coordination between the plans. And also the third publication is about current practice in flood risk management. And on this one, I'm not going to elaborate to explain the slide, but you see in how many areas now, member states, in how many flood risk management related areas our member states are active, and you will discover a lot more if you have a look at the publication. And I believe that's it. some links to keep in touch, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ioannis. You show us how important it is to indeed know this background for even for the research community, because I think it's there are a lot of information that are very useful. So thank you very much for providing these links. I would like to open the floor for possible questions. Yes, Horst. You need a microphone somewhere.
Horst Kremers, Berlin, Germany. Just a short question. Since today is a day here of stakeholders in principle, my question would be the flood directive, as far as I remember and know it, does not work too much on stakeholders' interest. Preparedness, stakeholders' preparedness, post-disaster support and interest of stakeholders and so on. Is there a perspective also in the flood directive to go this way, not only to do that technically and administratively?
Thank you. Member states must consult widely when they have the draft flood risk management plans. And what we have seen is that they do this also for the preliminary flood risk assessments and the flood hazard and risk maps. Consultation already before the health crisis has moved from physical consultation, let's say at the town hall or at the ministry, to digital consultation. And I believe that's a good thing. So the opportunity is there. Whether the opportunity is being seized by all stakeholders, by all relevant stakeholders, that's another discussion. I think it is not. And this is part of the effort to coordinate better. So does the town planning department know about the flood hazard and risk maps? Do flood risk managers know about what is allowed to be built in a floodplain? What about the fire department? Where are the hospitals built? Do they know that they might be in a flood zone, in a flood-prone zone? So yes, there is room for improvement there, but the directive provides for it.
Thank you, Ioannis. Another question? Well, you have been very clear, Ioannis, and thank you very much for your presentation again. And we will be in touch regarding some research projects which are of direct interest to DG Environment and to the flood directive. Thank you very much. Now I would like to know whether our colleague from DG ERA is online, because
yes, I am online. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Is it Charlotte?
Wonderful.
Or?
It is Charlotte. Yes.
Hello, Charlotte. Nice to be with us. Well, it's quite unusual. We are 3 minutes earlier than scheduled. But if you are ready, please take the floor and make your presentation.
Thank you, Philippe. Definitely ready. So, hello everyone. My name is Charlotte Renkens. I'm a policy officer and I work in the emergency office of HERA. I don't have a PowerPoint and I'll be pretty brief, but what I'll do in my presentation is first of all explain what is HERA, because we're newly established, so I thought it would be good to set that out, and then also explain how we're working on 2 of the crises that we've been confronted with in the time of our existence. So that's COVID-19 and now the war in Ukraine. So HERA stands for European Health Emergency Preparedness and Response Authority. And we started working on the 1st of October formally as a separate commissioned service. So we're a commissioned DG. And what we try to do is provide a beginning to end solution for what we call cross-border health emergencies. So that ranges from identifying the threats to ensuring that medical countermeasures are available. And that's a term we use a lot. And with medical countermeasures, we mean vaccines, for example, or certain drugs, therapeutics, or diagnostics, for example. HERA works in two different modes. So we have a preparedness mode and we have a crisis mode. When we are in the preparedness mode, we try to anticipate future health crises, basically, and we try to put in place mechanisms to best protect EU citizens from these health threats. So this is kind of our peace mode. And the first key element is to put in place mechanisms to anticipate and detect health crises at the beginning, when they start somewhere in the world. And we do this together with the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control. So what we want to do is create a mechanism to receive raw data on health crises as soon as they start. We've seen with COVID-19, for example, that a delay in transmission of information on a starting health crisis can be really fatal. So it's important that we get this information as soon as possible. So we want to have this horizon scanning mechanism, and we're heavily going to invest in research and innovation for that. Next to this horizon scanning, what we'll do in the preparedness mode is build stocks of medical countermeasures. So we'll be stockpiling certain drugs, certain medicines as a general anticipation measures. And we're, for example, now in the process of purchasing drugs against the pandemic flu, to give just one example. Now, if we're going into crisis mode, we have certain emergency measures that we will be able to take. This is part of a regulation that was proposed that still needs to be adopted, but that will happen soon. So then we would in a very targeted way, purchase crisis-relevant medical countermeasures, and we'll also activate emergency research so that we very quickly can get a good understanding of the situation at hand. Normally, we're under the leadership of the Commissioner for Health, but in this crisis mode, we would fall directly under the President. So that also means kind of a change in what we can do, essentially. And we work with member states within what we call the HERA board. So HERA is a normal Commission DG, as I explained, but we do have member state representation, and we consult member states on certain issues, for example, on our work plan. And so in crisis mode, the HERA board would be changed into a crisis board, which means that, for example, ministers or even heads of states would take place in that. What we're also doing is establishing partnerships with countries that have similar institutions as HERA. So, for example, in the US, there's BARDA. And there's similar institutions or being set up in, for example, Japan, in Canada, Korea, Mexico. And we want to make memorandums of understanding with those countries so that we can have all the information that we need, that we have a network to activate when we feel that there might be a new crisis. So ideally, what we would have, of course, is a big database where all the information will be available. In terms of international outreach, we don't only work with countries like the US and so forth. We also work a lot with countries in Africa, for example, which we did for COVID-19, kind of partnering up on research and what is needed there, but also simply on COVID-19 vaccines and trying to send as many as possible. Perhaps also relevant for you is that HERA works both on natural but also on man-made threats. So preparation and response to bioterrorism is also within our mandate. And something what we do in that regard, together with our colleagues in DG ECHO, is, for example, stockpiling certain CBRN countermeasures, so personal protective equipment, certain antidotes, etc. We have a big we have a lot of money available for that. So a call for proposals just opened, which will basically, where we're asking member states to propose the building of a stockpile, which will be funded by the European Commission. And we're aiming to have stockpiles with a good geographic spread throughout the EU, which in case of an incident anywhere in the EU, the items should be able to be deployed within 12 hours. So that's a bit about HERA in regards to the work that we're doing in relation to the actual crises that we see. So for the moment, HERA is still working on the COVID-19 crisis and on our vaccines and therapeutics, our medicine strategy, and also on the detection of variants. This work is still ongoing. What we did in relation to vaccines is, and also in relation to the therapeutics, that we've actually been buying them. In the case of vaccines, we did it on behalf of the member states. So the Commission was the only one buying. For the therapeutics or for the medicines, we're doing it together with the member states. We're also concluding advanced purchase agreements. So this means that we have agreements in place even before a certain product comes out. So we're trying to scan the market for promising products and then conclude these advanced purchase agreements. So that's on COVID-19. Now, obviously, as of recent, we've also been confronted with the war in Ukraine, and there we try also to assist with the medical assistance that is requested by Ukraine through the Union Civil Protection Mechanism in ECHO. And there's a lot of medical items needed, obviously. So vaccines and medicines that Ukraine has requested, for example. And we're trying to simply help with finding ways to get it there as quickly as possible. So this could be through donations that member states do, donations that private actors, that companies do in some cases, but also looking into potential procurement of items that are not yet donated or needs that are unmet. And what we do in HERA is that we try to map the availabilities of the items that are needed, the market availabilities, potential shortages, to be aware of those ahead of time. So we're looking at both the short-term needs, but also the longer-term needs. And the same goes also for certain CBRN countermeasures that Ukraine has requested. So for example, Ukraine has requested a large number of potassium iodide pills. So there we're also trying to see what can be donated, if there's a part that we can procure, and so on. And here again, we work with different international players, because Ukraine hasn't just been requesting assistance to the Commission. It's also submitted similar requests to the US, for example, and the World Health Organization. So we're really trying to see, to work together as much as possible and make sure that we don't all donate or all procure the same thing for Ukraine. So that's it from my side. An introduction of HERA and some explanations of what we do in relation to current crises. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. And I have a naive question on what is the prerogatives of DG Santé and DG HERA. For example, about the cross-border threats to health, the decision 1082. Is it still ruled by DG Santé, or did you take that over?
I would actually need to check, because I'm not that much in the legal team. Generally speaking, what HERA is really focused on is these medical countermeasures, and making sure that we have access to them.
So in a way, you are playing a role which is in a way comparable to the RCC at DG ECHO regarding medical threats, health threats.
In a way.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
We're
you.
working in complementarity, I would say. Yeah.
Any question to Charlotte? Yes, please, Yvonne. You have a microphone somewhere for Yvonne? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for not having PowerPoint. It's quite refreshing. You have mentioned collaboration with Japan and other countries. I come from Norway, so my question is what the relation to the associated countries between HERA and, so can elaborate on that. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. I mean, that were just a few examples, but clearly we're also, but I have to say our engagement in the international sphere is still kind of at the early stages, because as I said, we're only established in October, and we've been focusing a lot on COVID-19, and just when that was getting a bit more stable, at least, we were confronted with another crisis. So I do see that we're still in the early stages. So with many partners, we're in the process of establishing memorandums of understanding, for example. But definitely there's other countries. I think in principle, we're interested in establishing contacts and cooperation structures with all like-minded countries, I would say.
Thank you. Further question to Charlotte? Yes? You have. We need to give you a microphone to. Yeah, thank you.
Charlotte, thank you for the interesting presentation and for the important role that you are going to play with HERA in the global scene. One question is regarding the stockpiling that you have mentioned in several different equipment field and medication. Is HERA already having an emergency management system, for a bit like a CRM system for managing stocks, supply chains, replenishment, and have it interoperable at the level, international level, with different other stockpiles that might be created around the world?
Thank you. That is a really good question. The short answer is no. Actually, I saw a question in the chat if I could share more info on the activities related to HERA. I'm going to post there the work plan. And the question about the management of stockpiles is also discussed in the work plan. So the stockpiles are not a new idea for the European Commission. So DG ECHO has been already establishing stockpiles for certain medical items. Now that we're kind of intensifying this, also in the CBRN sphere, we do have budget and we do have the plans to create an IT system for the management of these stockpiles. So that's definitely something we plan, but it's not yet in place.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Further inputs, further questions? If not, we thank you very much, Charlotte. It has been very, very useful, the presentation, very, very clear. And well, I've learned a lot, in fact, so it's good as a Commission official, always. So thank you very much. I wish you all the best for your continuation. It's quite a big job you are doing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So with this, we are approaching. Yeah. So with this, we are slowly approaching the end of this first day. Well, in the agenda, it's written general QA and conclusions. Well, my conclusions, it will be very short. I say, well, I enjoyed it. You have a general QA, yeah, a question. So, Horst, please ask a general question.
Philippe, for us also, it would be interesting to know about the questions put in the chat function of the Zoom. That also would be interesting for us. And along with that, my suggestion would be, please open the Zoom participation also for physical attendances, because it is, as I know from other conventions, very interesting for people to put questions and answers from the community in the chat. That would be very helpful, as far as I know, and would be a real good increase of the functionality of the community.
Okay, François, is it possible this? Can do that? Yeah, that's possible. So well, but not for now. You mean for tomorrow? Okay, that. So if you check your emails tonight, you will have the Zoom questions in your email. Thanks very much. Yeah. What we need? I agree with Horst that it will be nice to monitor them online so that we can react from time to time. There are comments, but there may be questions, and it's true that I did not realize that. Thank you for this. You had something to. You have a new fish for me. Now, thank you very much. Announcement. Please can tomorrow's speakers ensure that the organizers, John, have their presentation. So, John needs your presentation, speakers, please. Yeah. So, and in my case, well, I thank you very much. It has been a pleasure today. It's a long day, and I will. It's not yet finished. we have people who will be staying tonight for the dinner. I would like you to free the room as soon as possible, because we need to have a sound check that will be taking place from 5:30 to 6:30. And in the room beside, you have a cocktail which is served, so you can either relax and go to your hotel and come back if you have registered for dinner, or stay here and network here. We will be welcoming you back at 6:30, and there will be a buffet and a concert that will take place from 7 to 8 o'clock normally, so 7 to 8:15. This is the plan for tonight. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to see you later if you are staying.
Ça va?
Ça va, donc ouais, quand ça va redémarrer,
Ouais, il faudra peut-être recadrer ces caméras-là, on va voir un peu comment ils se placent.